How is it that we can say we know something as opposed to merely believe it, or think it, or feel it? How could I say to someone else, well, I'm certain about this, I'm absolutely certain that it's true? What kinds of proofs or justifications or demonstrations should I need to provide in order to prove something, either to myself or someone else? These are some of the concepts, some of the topics that come up in an area of philosophy called epistemology. And epistemology means the study of knowledge, or the science of knowledge. We're going to go through some of these at a very practical level, and there's a lot more material below to read, but I'm just going to introduce some of the concepts in this brief video. One of the wonderful things about people are all the different beliefs and the sources that these beliefs come from, how they develop within us. And there are three primary ways that these come about. One of them is it seems that we just absorb beliefs, in a sense, from the society around us, from the environment into which we're born and raised, especially from a very young age, before we're really aware and discriminating about things. We pick up beliefs from how other people act, how they talk, how they treat each other, and how they encourage us to do the same things, sometimes without really even explaining why they're doing what they're doing, but merely by example. Another source of belief is through explicit teaching, express teaching, when our parents tell us, do this for this reason. Or teachers might do the same. And as we get older, perhaps the political or the legal system might make a claim that we should believe this or act in a certain way. Our religions also do very much the same, as do philosophies, argue that we should believe certain things. And then finally, as we mature, we often discover beliefs on our own. This might come through our own investigations into nature, interactions and discussions with others, kind of informal interactions, reading books, and then especially upon our own reflection on the things that we've already learned. We take different things that we've learned and compare them to each other, and sometimes from those we can reason our way to new things that weren't expressly taught before, but are the result of other things that we believed or learned. In this we then come to the objects of belief. And the objects of belief are the particular things that we believe in. So I might believe that George Washington existed. I think most people would probably believe that. If you don't, there are plenty of books, references you could go to decide whether you think it's true. But in that case, my object of belief, in a sense it could be George Washington, or someone might say that the object of belief is George Washington's existence, whether he actually existed at some point in history. For current things, there might be the existence of you, who I haven't met, the existence of the things around me, the people around me. There could be belief in certain moral things, like it's wrong to murder, it's wrong to steal from others, or we should treat others with respect and dignity, we should give to the poor. So those are some different objects of belief, and they're different kinds. With these different objects of belief, there's a level of what's called subjectivity in what we believe. And really what that's a measure of is how much that belief is unique to the individual. So the more that a belief is internal or unique to an individual, we call it subjective for a kind of a special reason. And that reason is that the person believing, the believing person, is the subject of belief. So when I have a belief about a rock, or I have a belief about something political or religious or relational, I am the subject of the belief, and that external thing in which I'm believing is the object of belief. So we say that a belief is subjective when that belief is really wrapped up with me, with the person believing. So I might say, for example, basketball is a wonderful sport. It's the best sport there is. All other sports are garbage compared to basketball. And someone else might say, no, football. Football's the best sport. American football. Someone else says, no, soccer. Soccer's the best sport. And so on. It could go round and round. And really what we're all talking about and arguing about is something very subjective. It has to do with our own personal tastes. It really isn't whether one sport is in any way objectively better than another. It just has to do with which one brings me more satisfaction or brings another person more satisfaction. For one person it's basketball, for another it's football, for some it's basket weaving. Take your pick. So with a subjective belief, the thing in which we're believing, the object of belief, is something in a sense inside of us. It's our own tastes, our own perspectives, our own opinions, maybe how we respond to something, as opposed to really the thing external to us. And then there are some objects of belief that are more objective. These are things that aren't really internal to us. It isn't a personal taste. It isn't something I think or have an opinion about, but it's something more external to me. A rather innocuous example would be the weather. So I could say it's freezing cold outside right now. It's about 35 degrees and rather rainy and drizzly here as this is being recorded. Someone else really couldn't come along and honestly say, no, it isn't. You're completely wrong. It's sunny and warm, about 100 degrees out. One of us is incorrect about that. The object of belief is external to us. It's something that isn't subjective or internal to us. It's something that we both share in, and neither of us really possesses or can claim ownership of. So that's the difference between a subjective belief and an objective belief. Now, sometimes it's easy to confuse the idea of an objective belief with an object, the object of belief. And though these are related, they're really two different things. The object of belief is that thing in which we are believing, that thing about which we are expressing an attitude or some type of confidence. And an objective belief has to do with whether that thing is external to us, something that is perceived ideally the same by different people. So we've covered a little about the sources of belief, the objects of belief, and how these things can differ. And we've covered a little bit of ground on the subjectivity and objectivity of the things we might believe, how they're internal to us as subject, or how they might be more external to us. And let's go a little bit over justifications for belief. This is where we start to go from whether we merely have an opinion about something, or we believe something, or we think something, to being able to say to someone, no, I really know this to be true. I know that so-and-so is this way, or I know that the world is round, or I know that there are whales in the Pacific Ocean. Of course, those are abstract and silly examples, but these are kinds of ideas that we go into on a daily basis in our interactions with each other. our communications with each other are based on the things that we believe, on the things that we want to say we know to be true. We're not always right about this, and even when we are right, sometimes it's hard to convince someone else of these things. Sometimes it's hard to give them a demonstration that convinces them of the same truth, or at least to the same degree that we might believe in it. So what are some of these justifications? Well, one is whether we've personally experienced it. So in an example in the readings below, I mentioned how I believe in the Pacific Ocean, not because teachers told me about it, but because I've been to it many times. I've waded in it, I've swam in it. It's very cold, depending on whether you go into it up in Washington or in Oregon or down in California or further south or further north. But I've been there, I've seen it, I've touched it. So if someone were to say to me, well, I don't believe in the Pacific Ocean, that'd be fine for them to believe that, I guess, but it would have no effect on me because I've experienced it personally. Now, the strange thing about personal experiences, and perhaps it isn't strange, that's not really the right word, the difficult thing with personal experiences is that they really affect us, the person who experienced them, but they can be difficult to use as a demonstration to convince someone else. Because they might go, well, maybe you were dreaming, or for whatever reason they might not agree with your experience or your interpretation of what took place. In many cases, some people might say, well, that's just your opinion about something. So a personal experience can make something very true for you. It doesn't make it any more or less true, but it can make it difficult to demonstrate to others. Another kind of justification is similar to this, and this is the testimony or witness of other parties. Either a great many other parties, or perhaps some authority or expert in a matter. This especially comes to play in things that are difficult for the average person on the street to understand, perhaps something scientific, or very sophisticated. It can be hard to understand it, so we trust an authority in a matter. If this person is really competent in it, and they've studied it for years, and they're experts in it, and they tell us this is how it is, we often just take their word for it. We believe them until they're proven wrong or proven to be nuts. This is at the heart of so many things that we believe about history and about the world, about the universe, about things that we maybe have never experienced or don't understand ourselves, but we simply take on the word of others who, at some point in history, experienced them, wrote them down, told others about it. And then that comes to us today as history. I use in the example in the text below some arguments about whether people existed in history. Did George Washington exist? I've seen debates about whether Jesus of Nazareth ever really existed. And what kinds of justifications are necessary in order to prove something like that to someone else. Another way that people are often persuaded to the truth of something is through reason or logic. Sometimes it's called critical thinking. And this comes in two forms. One of them is called inductive, and the other is called deductive. We don't often speak about them in that way, but in technical circles it's mentioned that way. And for an inductive argument, that's where we would have lots of examples of something. Take cars. Yeah, I see a bunch of cars that have four wheels. I might assume from that all cars have four wheels. The next time I see something with four wheels going down the road, oh look, there's a car. And then I might be very surprised to see a car go by that had three wheels. Perhaps would give it a different name, classify it as something other than a car, or something with two wheels. And we go, well, it's not a car, it's a motorcycle. In any event, an inductive method of reasoning is where we look at different examples of something, and from those examples make assumptions about other similar things. Another common method of reasoning is called deductive reasoning or deductive logic. This is a huge topic unto itself, but it can be very interesting to some. The basic essence of it is the recognition that if we have true premises, these will be initial statements about the state of affairs. If we have true premises, and if we have a sound logic, that is good reasoning, then the conclusion of our reasoning is necessarily true. So a real common textbook academic example is all men are mortal. That's one of our premises, and that would be hard to argue any other way. I don't know that any of us have ever known or heard of any man who is not mortal. It's part of being man. So we can say that one was quite certain. And then the second step, the second premise is, well, Socrates is a man. And you could insert whoever you want in there if you don't care about Socrates or anybody else. And then the conclusion is, therefore, Socrates is mortal. Now this seems very basic and maybe boring and very simple, but it's a very powerful method of reasoning. And it's something that does come up in arguments. It comes up in legal disputes. It can come up, and it's a good tool to learn. It's great to learn some critical thinking, some basic logic, some basic deduction, because so much around us, so many of the things that impose upon us. I mentioned earlier how many of our beliefs are absorbed. So many of these beliefs are contradictory and perhaps not even true. But through things like deductive logic, and through comparing them with other beliefs and experiences, our personal experience, or the testimony of authorities, or the testimony of a great many of other witnesses, we can sometimes find errors in our own beliefs. Maybe errors in others, so we need to be a little careful and a little delicate when we point those out. And in all of this, I just want to encourage you, think about the readings below, and I welcome your comments and feedback. And as we examine our own beliefs, just try to think honestly, what justification do I have for the things that I believe I know? Is that justification sound? Is it solid? Is it good? Could I find other justification? Now, of course, if I don't have justification for something I believe, that doesn't mean that it's false. It may very well be true. Certain beliefs, it can be very hard to find justification for them, let alone demonstrate that to others, as was mentioned with the personal experience. So again, thank you for taking the time for watching this video. I hope you enjoy the reading below and the other readings that are coming up. Again, I welcome your comments, your questions, your criticisms, and I wish you a good day.